Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doreen Aguilar-Rasmussen. I'm Assistant Dean for Student Affairs here at Medill. Welcome. Before we begin our ceremony today, Northwestern is a community of learners situated within a network of historical and contemporary relationships with Native American tribes, communities, parents, students, and alumni. It is also in close proximity to an urban Native American community in Chicago and near several tribes in the Midwest. The Northwestern campus sits on the traditional homelands of the people of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, the Odawa, as well as the Menominee, the Miami, and Ho-Chunk nations. It is also a site of trade, travel, gathering, and healing for more than a dozen other Native tribes and is still home to over 100,000 tribal members in the state of Illinois. It is within Northwestern's responsibility as an academic institution to disseminate knowledge about Native peoples and the institution's history with them. Consistent with the university's commitment to diversity and inclusion, Northwestern works towards building relationships with Native American communities through academic pursuits, partnerships, historical recognitions, community service, and enrollment efforts. Thank you. And faculty, please be seated. I'd now like to invite Dean Whitaker to the podium.
Oh, yes, thank you. I guess I don't need that, do I?
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Greetings, parents, siblings, significant others, and all who are here to celebrate with us today. And congratulations to the class of 2021. In any given year, graduation exercises are special events. This one is particularly special given all that we've endured over the past 15 months. I can't tell you how ecstatic it makes me to see your masked faces live and in person rather than in little Zoom squares. This is a particularly momentous year for me to preside over a convocation as the 9th Dean of Medill, and not just because we're emerging from a global pandemic. We are also, as you know, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the founding of Medill. Parents, friends, those of you who don't know, Medill turned 100 on February 8th of this year, and I happen to feel a special bond to the centennial class. We've been through a lot this year, some pain, some loss. Just this weekend, we experienced the particularly a tragic loss of one of our first-year students, Simone Scott, who was a bright light in our community that was dimmed much too soon. I'd like us to take a moment of silence to remember Simone. Thank you. For many of you who are receiving bachelor's degrees, we go all the way back to the summer of 2016 when you were in the Cherub program. You were the last class for whom I served as a Cherub instructor. I'm sure many of you remember my sterling performance as Barack Obama during the all-day story. The BSJ class also contains my last peer advising group, the last class for which I taught 2011, the last class for which I taught magazine presentation. We have been through a record-breaking school-closing polar vortex. We've been through Jeff Sessions' protests and the aftermath. And in the wake of the George Floyd killing, we've been through our own reckoning with institutional racism. At your urging, Medill has engaged in trenchant and sometimes difficult conversations about the relationship and responsibilities that we as journalists have to the communities we cover, particularly marginalized communities that too often are either overlooked or depicted with demeaning and degrading tropes and stereotypes. You, our undergraduates, have demanded change and challenged us in ways that have positively impacted our practice and our pedagogy. Over the course of the pandemic, I was completely awed by the creativity and enterprise you displayed in producing stories remotely for student media outlets ranging from Blackboard Magazine to North by Northwestern to the Daily Northwestern and the Northwestern News Network. Your coverage was spectacular, and I bragged about you to everyone I encountered, and I'm very grateful to have been a part of your lives and to have watched you grow and flourish over the past 4 years. To our master's degree recipients, you too are a very, very special group. You took a tremendous leap of faith when you decided to enroll in a one-year master's degree program in the midst of a pandemic. That was incredibly brave of you, and we're so appreciative of the confidence you had in our ability to deliver what we promised. But you did your part too to make the most of a difficult situation. You dove in heart and soul, and we're so proud of the diligent way that you've applied yourself to this training. Now, I have a secret I want to confide in everyone here, and you have to promise not to tell anyone. If you say I said this, I will deny it. But as a general rule, graduate students are a cranky lot. And I get it. This is an expensive degree. It's a tremendous commitment and investment, so graduate students tend to approach the experience in a very transactional way. But you, the MSJ class of 2021, have been a very different cohort, thoughtful, industrious, accepting of the limitations of social distancing, but incredibly creative in the way that you have worked through those limitations in order to do really fine journalism under very difficult circumstances. And I think I speak for all of my colleagues when I say that you've been a delight to work with. It's quite fitting that you would be our Centennial Master's degree class. No matter where you did your undergraduate work, you are now Wildcats through and through, and I'm delighted to embrace you as part of the Medill family. Of course, both our graduate and undergraduate students got to this journey, or would not have been able to get through this journey without the village of supporters who've helped them reach this milestone. And I think it's important that we take as many opportunities as possible to pay homage to the people whose shoulders we stand on. So class of 2021, I'd like you to indulge me for a moment and stand, look around for your parents, grandparents, uncles, guardians, siblings, and others who've supported you and sacrificed you, and give them a hand for all that they've done for you. As dean, I have my own support network to thank. I have the great fortune to work alongside an amazing group of colleagues, faculty, and staff, some of whom are joining us here today. I tell everyone that I have the most dedicated group of professionals shepherding our students through our programs. I think they're the best, not just at Northwestern, but throughout higher education. And I know because I put 2 kids through college, and they had horrible student services. On the faculty side, my colleagues are supremely talented journalists, scholars, researchers, teachers, and dedicated lifelong members, as many of you will discover when you're out in the world. Last year, we charged them with rethinking their classes and their pedagogy for remote instruction, and I'm happy to report that to an instructor, they accepted that charge and, in my estimation, really surpassed all expectations in their delivery of online classes. I'm tremendously proud of them, but I'm especially proud of the way they went above and beyond the call of duty during this difficult time. So will the members of the Medill faculty please stand, and please join me in recognizing them. I'd like to offer a bit of special recognition to 3 colleagues who are retiring at the end of this year. They have been great friends and supporters of mine for decades even, so their departures are a great personal loss for me and for Medill. They are all amazing teachers, highly regarded professionals who not only stamped their marks on Medill, but on journalism and the way we look at the world. We wish them well as they enter the next act of their personal and professional journeys. So would Professors Jack Doppold, Mary Dudinsky, and Susan Mango Curtis stand and be recognized? Class of 2021, I want to emphasize that there's a reason that we call these exercises commencement. That's because this is not the end of your relationship with Medill. This is the beginning of your new relationship with this institution. You join an elite club of more than 18,000 alumni dispersed throughout the world who call themselves Medillians. And no matter what you do in life, whether you become a journalist or a marketing specialist or a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor, I promise you that for the rest of your life and career, the Medill stamp will be the badge that helps you gain entry through a number of portals. And you will forever carry with you the ideals of truth, fairness, and accuracy that have been hallmarks of your Medill education. As many of you know, I do not release my grasp of my former students very easily. I hold on pretty tightly for years. So when you're out in the world, don't be surprised when I reach out and tap you on the shoulder, asking you to help a young student or alumnus who's hoping to follow in your footsteps, no matter what professional direction those footsteps lead you in. I want you to remember the help you received from the people on this stage. Think about the recommendations they wrote, the job or internship they directed you to. Pay it forward and backward. That's how the Medill Mafia works. It's the secret to what has made this institution great for 100 years. Congratulations, class of 2021. I look forward to seeing what you'll be doing during Medill's next 100 years. Now go forth and make us even more proud of you than we already are. Thank you. I now have the distinct pleasure to turn this part of the proceedings over to Provost Kathleen Haggerty for a special presentation to our guest of honor. Provost Haggerty is the first woman to preside as the Chief Academic Officer of Northwestern. Prior to assuming her current role, she was interim dean and first Chicago professor of finance in the Kellogg School of Management. She will now bestow an honorary degree on our esteemed guest speaker, Medill alumnus George R.R. Martin. Provost Haggerty.
Thank you, Dean Whitaker. It is a pleasure to be here to celebrate the accomplishments of these students, particularly during the year that Medill marks its centennial. To the graduates, congratulations on your accomplishments. We are very proud of you, and we look forward to witnessing your future accomplishments as you follow in the footsteps of so many illustrious Medill alums. Each year at commencement, the university recognizes a number of individuals of exceptional accomplishment with honorary degrees. Honorary degrees play an important role in the history of a university, for a university proclaims its values through those it chooses to honor. These degrees are awarded on the recommendation of the Faculty Senate and with the approval of the University Board of Trustees. Roger Boyd, Associate Professor Emeritus of Journalism, is presenting for the honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, George R.R. Martin.
George R.R. Martin, the depth and brilliance of your imagination have transported us to entirely new worlds. Both in print and on television, your stories and characters have fascinated millions. Your many awards testify to your preeminence in the fields of science fiction and fantasy. We are proud to claim you as one of our own.
I admit you, George R.R. Martin, to the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters with all the honors and privileges appertaining thereto. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you, Provost Haggerty. It's a privilege to share the podium with you. And George, we got through that hooding without any wardrobe malfunction. George R.R. Martin applied to the Medill BSJ program without ever having visited campus. Indeed, he had never been very far west of his home in a working-class neighborhood of Bayonne, New Jersey, outside of New York City. But he had heard of Medill's reputation and saw journalism as a way to channel his interest in storytelling and writing. Fortunately for him and for Medill, George was admitted. He once told Northwestern magazine that to attend classes that first fall quarter, he traveled to Chicago not in the family car or by air, but on a Greyhound bus carrying 2 huge suitcases and an electric typewriter. In those days, suitcases had no wheels. From the Chicago bus station, he managed to find his way to the L, got on the right train, and once arriving in Evanston, made it to his dorm room in Bob Hall. George has said that for a time, his mother thought Bob was his roommate and would ask, "How is Bob Hall doing?" George would answer, "No, Mom, Bob Hall is the building. My roommate is Jeff." George was enrolled at Medill for 5 years, completing both the bachelor's and master's programs. Now, information available online claims that in February of his graduate year, Galaxy Science Fiction magazine published an article he had written, his first professional sale. Well, George, you know what they told us when we were students at Medill. If your mother says she loves you, check it out. By the way, these were occasionally found on bulletin boards in Fisk Hall when we were students. So, I bought a copy of that February issue of Galaxy on eBay, and sure enough, here on page 119 is The Hero by George R.R. Martin with the subhead, "He had one wish left, to fight his last war in peace." It is a bit ironic that one of the highlights of George's MSJ year was the Medill Washington program, where he has said he was told by the program director that his writing was too cute. After Medill, George had various jobs. He worked for the Cook County Legal Assistance Foundation, taught journalism and English at a college in Iowa, and directed chess tournaments. He moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico in 1979 to focus on writing full-time, and for a while was a script writer for programs such as The Twilight Zone and Beauty and the Beast. He still lives in Santa Fe, and somehow I don't think he took the Greyhound bus to be with us today. George has said that some of his books didn't sell, and his career crashed and burned twice. Quote, "There were times I didn't think it would work out for me. But as we all know, ultimately things did work out. Game of Thrones, the first in a series of books, A Song of Ice and Fire, was published in 1996, and the HBO television series made its debut in 2011. In that series of 5 books, George writes about castles and dragons, assassins and zombies. But on another level, his fantasy novels portray in vivid terms the complexity of the human condition, the fact that there is some good and bad in all of us. Indeed, George Martin explores what it means to be human as well as any writer of this era. His books have sold nearly 100 million copies worldwide, have been translated into about 50 languages, and have been adapted into the HBO series that has aired in 170 countries, and has proven to be one of the most popular in the history of television. An online site lists nearly 50 awards that George Martin has won over the years, including multiple Emmys for Game of Thrones. Several years ago, Time magazine named George Martin one of the 100 most influential people in the world. So it truly is an honor in this Medill's centennial year to introduce a master storyteller, my own Medill graduate school classmate from the year of well, George, if it's okay with you, let's just say from a while ago, Dr. George R.R. Martin.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words, Professor Boyd. And thanks as well to the Dean and the faculty for inviting me to speak today. It's always a pleasure for me to return to Northwestern, something I've done far too seldom since I left Evanston. And after a year in quarantine, it is a thrill just to get out of the house. It has been half a century since my own graduation, but my memories of Northwestern remain fresh. I still recall those words of that song from the WAMU show. How's it go? The football games, the dances, the serious romances, the parties when we didn't get home till dawn. Now, I did attend a lot of football games at Old Dyke Stadium, most of which we lost. I'm not likely to forget that. My father, who loved to gamble on sports, felt a moral obligation to bet on Northwestern every week since his son was a student there. In the end, I think his losses may have added up to more than the cost of my tuition. The dances, though? Sorry, don't dance. I did have a couple of serious romances. Got my heart broken twice on this very campus. Transposed into the future on alien worlds, those relationships formed the emotional core of a number of my early stories. Bleed onto the paper, Harlan Ellison once said, and it worked for me. As for the parties where they didn't get home till dawn, alas, I never got my invitations. I do remember my friends and classmates, well, some of them at least. I remember the dorm I lived in, the North Shore Hotel, still standing. I remember my teachers, Ben Baldwin, Peter Jacoby, James Stacy, Neil McNeil, and Bergen Evans, whose class was so popular that he filled Tech Auditorium year after year. I doubt that Professor Evans ever knew my name, but he had a profound effect on my life and my writing all the same. I remember the chess team I captained. We won more often than the football team, but never managed to take down the University of Chicago. As for football, I remember when the student body voted to change the name of the Wildcats to the Purple Haze. Somehow, that didn't stick. My years in Evanston were the years that history has taken to calling the turbulent 60s. There may have been dances and parties, but the protests were more visible. Marches, demonstrations, strikes, rallies, sit-ins, love-ins, all of it reaching a crescendo when the student body rose up against the invasion of Cambodia and the murders at Kent State and tore up the wrought iron fences from one end of campus to the other to erect barricades, transforming Sheridan Road into something akin to the streets of Paris during the French Revolution for about a week. Not long after, I found myself standing with the rest of the class of 1971, where you are standing now, diploma in hand, about to depart Medill and begin what my father called real life. Some of my classmates departed for jobs on newspapers, great and small. Others began careers in radio, television, and film, joined an advertising agency or the staff of a magazine, or found employment with Uncle Sam. Over in Vietnam, the war was still raging, and boys unlucky enough to have had their birth date pulled in the draft lottery found themselves faced with an offer they could not refuse. I got one of those offers myself, but I had been granted conscientious objector status. Had my application been denied? Well, no one knows for certain what lies at the end of roads not taken. But I don't doubt that you can find the names of some of my classmates engraved upon that big black wall in Washington, D.C. I was luckier, doing 2 years alternative service with Vista in Chicago. Nights and weekends, I wrote science fiction. By the end of my service, I had sold a dozen stories and had even been nominated for an award. I lost. I never did end up getting a job reporting the news. Instead, I made a career making up stories about aliens and dragons and vampires. I can almost picture some of my old professors shaking their heads and wondering how I went wrong. A couple of my colleagues, fellow writers of science fiction and fantasy, like to call themselves professional liars. I get the joke, but it's not one I tell myself. Yes, my stories are all about people who never lived, doing things that never happened, in places and times that have never existed. But I like to believe there are truths in them nonetheless, truths about life and love, good and evil, and the human heart in conflict with itself, the only thing worth writing about, according to William Faulkner. But a novelist's truth and a journalist's truth are two different things. And my fictions have certainly done well for me. Winston Churchill once said, "A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on." Maybe that accounts for it. My lies flew on the wings of dragons. America was bitterly divided when I left Northwestern in 1971. America is bitterly divided today. Many of the issues that sparked protest and dissension in 1971 remain issues today. Racism, we called it civil rights back then. Sexism, in 1971 the term was women's liberation. Income inequality, back then we spoke of poverty. But the biggest issue, the fault line through the center of American society back then, was the war in Vietnam. Unlike today, the fight over Vietnam did not break down on strictly partisan lines. There were hawks on the Democratic side, among them Lyndon Baines Johnson himself. There were doves among the Republicans, men who wanted us out of Vietnam. People could and did change their positions. In the end, that was what the marches and demonstrations and protests were about, changing minds. I was one of those whose minds was changed. I came to Northwestern in 1966 as a patriotic, crew-cut high school kid out of New Jersey, convinced that we had to stop communist aggression, that if we did not fight the Viet Cong in Vietnam in a few years, we would surely be fighting them in the streets of Bayonne or Evanston. It was not any speech or march or protest that began my transformation. It was a class assignment, a paper I had to write about the origins of the war. The deeper I delved into the history of Vietnam and the American involvement there, the more uncomfortable I grew. This was not the story I had been told. The real story did not fit with my vision of America and the ideals I thought she stood for. I did not want to accept it, but I had no choice. The history was too convincing. It was the facts that changed my mind. Facts. A short word, a simple concept. Truth has a grander ring to it, I will admit, but truth is a tricky thing. A lot goes into deciding whatsoever things are true. Given the same facts, even honest, well-meaning, and reasonable men and women may arrive at different conclusions, each finding his own truth. But facts are the foundation on which all truths must rest. Unless you get your facts right, you have no hope of arriving at the truth. No doubt, everyone here is familiar with the Medill F. Some of you may have had a closer acquaintance with it than you would care to admit. That term was not in common use back in the 60s, as best I recall. The first time it came to my attention was years after my graduation. I was certainly familiar with the concept, however. No matter how deft your writing, how insightful your analysis, how skillful your interview techniques, if you got the facts wrong, even a single fact, a single small, inconsequential, trivial fact, your story was worthless. Readers who noticed your mistake would lose trust in the whole story. What if the rest of it was wrong too? Readers who missed your error would be misled. Neither outcome is acceptable. Falsehoods are never acceptable in a news story, whether intentional or unintentional. As Mark Twain once said, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. And yes, I did get a Medill F myself. Only one, I'm pleased to say, and it did not travel anywhere. It may well be because of that lesson learned long ago at Medill that I am so fearful of where we are today in this country, in this world. I would never have guessed that the United States could ever become more divided than it was in 1971, yet somehow we have achieved that. When I look about today, I cannot help but hear the words of William Butler Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. There was a time, not so long ago, when journalism was the center of our national life. We all read the same newspapers and magazines. We watched the same television shows. They defined us. They united us. They were as much a part of the United States as baseball, apple pie, and the 4th of July. And we trusted them. When Walter Cronkite would end his nightly broadcast with, "And that's the way it is," the country believed him. Liberal readers might not have liked what they read on the editorial page of the Chicago Tribune. Conservative readers would bristle at the editorials of the New York Times. But the news on the front page was seldom questioned. The news was the news. The facts we got from Cronkite on CBS were the same facts that Chet Huntley and David Brinkley were discussing on NBC. Watergate came along only a few years after my graduation. Nixon resigned in disgrace. Woodward and Bernstein became heroes. And applications rose at every journalism school in the country, including Medill. You don't need me to tell you that those days are gone. Broadcast news has become hopelessly politicized. Network news divisions, once considered a public trust, have been absorbed into the entertainment divisions. Opinions, previously confined to the editorial pages, have crept into news columns and newspapers after newspaper across the nation. The concept of objectivity belongs on the endangered species list. And all of this has eroded the public's faith in the journalists who bring us the news. You, my friends, the class of 2021, will have to bear the brunt of all of this. As Super Chicken was wont to say, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. Daniel Patrick Moynihan once said, "Everyone is entitled to his own opinions, but no one is entitled to his own facts." A truth that I fear much of the modern world has lost sight of. When I hear supposedly respectable political figures talking about alternative facts, my blood runs cold. Your opinion may differ from my opinion. Your truth may not be my truth. But facts are facts are facts. Ricky Gervais, in a sort of postscript to Moynihan's famous statement, said, "Opinions don't affect facts. But facts should affect opinions, and do if you're rational." But are we? John Milton once said, "Let truth and falsehood grapple. Whoever knew truth to be put to the worse in a free and open encounter." His Areopagitica, one of the oldest and most eloquent defenses of the concept of free speech, was another text I was introduced to here at Medill, one that I have often quoted and taken inspiration from in the decades since. But John Milton never had a Twitter account, and he never met Joseph Goebbels, the brilliant, if twisted, propaganda minister of Nazi Germany. Goebbels did not invent lying, but he certainly perfected it as an instrument of state. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it, Goebbels said. A lie told once remains a lie, but a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. I would like to tell you that Milton was right, that Goebbels was wrong. But then I look about me and I wonder. We seem to be living in the age of the big lie. Tens and thousands of my fellow citizens actually seem to believe that Hillary Clinton ran a cannibal pedophile ring from a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. And millions seem convinced that last year's election was stolen, though there is no shred of evidence to support that. During the course of my career as a science fiction writer and fantasist, I've written stories about ghosts, alien intelligences, faster-than-light starships, vampires, and dragons. Wild, fantastical things, but none half so unlikely as the sinister global conspiracies that a large portion of the population seem to believe are real. Will the future prove John Milton right? Or does tomorrow belong to Joseph Goebbels and the big lie? That, I think, may be up to you guys. The profession you're entering is not one greatly esteemed by most of your fellow citizens, alas. Recent polls show that journalists are considered slightly less trustworthy than bankers by most Americans, just a few percentage points ahead of lawyers. Mind you, they still rank higher than used car salesmen and members of Congress, but still. My fellow screenwriters have played a part in that. When was the last time you saw a journalist portrayed favorably in a movie or television show? It's been a long time since Lou Grant. These days, you only see reporters in the obligatory mob scene on the steps of a courthouse, screaming and shoving their microphones at some poor sod while shouting inane questions. Instead, we get more cop shows, lawyer shows, reality shows. A society finds its heroes in its stories. Journalists can be heroes, have been heroes, and I hope will be heroes again. It is a heroic thing, I believe, to find the facts and tell the truth, especially when those truths are unpopular and inconvenient. In recent years, the word gatekeeper has taken on a negative connotation, one that I believe is wholly undeserved. There was a reason why so many of the cities and towns of the ancient and medieval worlds were walled, and it was not to provide picturesque ruins for tourists to stroll upon. The night was dark and full of terrors, and the gatekeepers, the guards, were there to keep them out. Today's social media have given us a world largely without gatekeepers, and the trolls have all come out from under the bridges to bedevil us. Our divisions grow deeper and more rancorous every year. There is so much information, so much misinformation out there, so many falsehoods. And as Edgar Allan Poe once said, a lie travels around the world while the truth is putting her boots on. How can we hope to come together again, to trust? With facts, I say. That is where it all begins. I never wanted a journalist to tell me what to think. I could think for myself. Just give me the facts. Does that sound easy? Far from it. It was never easy, and it grows harder every year. A few years after my own graduation, when I had finally reached a point where I had a little disposable income, I made what was for me an extravagant purchase. I bought a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica. All that knowledge in one place, an essential tool for any writer. The other essential tools being a good dictionary, How to Lie with Statistics, and The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. That encyclopedia served me well for a long, long time. But a while back, observing the dust that had gathered on top of the books, I came to the realization that it had been years since I had last opened a volume. A larger repository of human knowledge had displaced it, the internet. These days, like most of the human race, when I need to know something, I Google. It's so much quicker, so much easier, and there is more information to be found online than in all the encyclopedias ever printed, put together. And that would be wonderful if only so much of it was not, well, wrong. Those of you who have been paying attention may have noticed that I have returned 3 times to that quote about a lie traveling halfway around the world while truth is putting on its pants or sneakers or boots. Words that I have variously attributed to Winston Churchill, to Mark Twain, to Edgar Allan Poe. Who actually said that, you may ask? All of the above, perhaps? Try none of the above. The line is most often attributed to Mark Twain, but according to quoteinvestigator.com, it does not turn up in any of his writings, and there is no record of him ever having uttered those words during any of his speeches. Churchill never said it. And Poe? Really? Does that sound like Poe to you? If a lie was traveling around the world in Poe's time, it was traveling by horseback. These days, lies travel at the speed of light, thanks to the internet. That's where I found all of these, what shall we call them, misquotations? You can find them too. They're still there. Just type in a paraphrase of the saying with quote, and it will all pop up with little pictures of whoever is being given credit for saying those words. They are wrong, mind you, but they're still there. And there they will remain for years, for decades, for centuries. 1,000 years to now, if humanity has spread to the stars, some future internet will tell us that Mark Twain once said, "A lie will jump to the Horsehead Nebula while truth is putting on a spacesuit." The internet is forever. Its errors are forever. The internet is the greatest depository of human knowledge in the long, sordid, and glorious history of our race, but it is also home of the big lie and 1,000 little lies, along with millions of innocent mistakes, fumbles, and bumbles. We should do better. We can do better. We have to do better if we ever hope to build a better world. You cannot build on a foundation of mistruths. Will we do better? That, I think, is up to you and all the other young men and women leaving college around the nation and the world. My generation, the class of 1971, had the specter of Vietnam hanging over us as we left campus. Your generation faces a different sort of struggle, a war for truth, for facts, for the soul of a nation. In the words of another of my heroes, Stan Lee, with great power comes great responsibility. Good luck to all of you.
We will now present the degrees of Bachelor of Science in Journalism. We will now present each graduate. Please hold your applause until everyone has had their moment on stage.
Alexis Murphy. Leslie Bonilla Muniz. Hannah Nisullivan. Maya Brown. Sake Overland. Andres Correa. Kristen Gertz Pryor. Victoria Lee. Alva Chavez. Sofia Sanchez. Brianna Farmer Quintana. Adam Mahoney. Emma Edmond. Wilson Chapman. Callan Luciano. Caitlin Chen. Cassidy Jackson. Roxanne Panis. Carmen Fernandez. Jamaica Sharon Ponder. Sarah Hahn. Stephanie Zhu. Tara Wu. Emily Wong. Owen Stidman. Hina Shrivastava. Michael Del Rosario. Madison Dong. Akil Kambametu. Carly Rubin. Zoe Grace Detweiler. Caroline Dooley. Charlie Seidels. Jack Lido. Jonina Safchik. Carly Menker. Sophia Crum. Selina Tsegai. Ravi Tandon. Victoria Woodburn. Nathan Graber Lipperman. Karen Reyes. Aaliyah Armstrong. Rachel Zisk. Liam Kiffin Lecca. Kevin Sweeney. Jonathan Perry. Mia Mamon. Jake Leiker. Andrew Fenichel. Charles Jacob Goldsmith. Andrew Golden. Ella Brockway. Charlotte Walsh. Gabrielle Bierenbaum. Samantha Handler. Marissa Martinez. Peter Warren. Michael Zhao. Adina Keeling. Rachel Mendelson. Jack Dalio. Connor Henry. Caroline Dudlack. Emma Steinberg. Christopher Burton. Abriel Sirega. Elizabeth Taft. Nora Crumley. Justin Sweetwood. Ethan Four. Duncan Agnew. Jack McKessie. Charles Heverin. Emily Pappin. Claire Proctor. V. Zuong. Li Ming Adrian Wan. Anna Maria Shilic. Josiah Bonifant. Amar Shabib. Fangni Nina Song. Avriana Allen. Justin Askenazi. Lindsay Lubowitz. Rachel Orbach. Lindsay Tanney. Jolie Simon. Martha Castro. Daniel Rosenzweig Ziff. Benjamin Schachter. Kamish Valiani. Matthew Lieberman. Eugenia Cardinelli. Rachel Kupfer. Owen Getcho. Ethan Taylor. Graham Brennan. Alex Hamilton Moore. Khalil Ellis. Lauren Gilbert. Lauren Satterwhite. Nia Parker Robinson. Ivy Whalen. Lizzie Jew. Jessica Viti. Stephanie Shin. Nikita Amir. Emily Surf. Emanuela Evans. Arudi Masinjila Machete. Kayla Clements. Rory Tapai. Zaria Howell. Samantha Baldwin. Emma McCormick. Alexa McHale. Ellen O'Brien. Elizabeth Frowine. Sophia Schott. Brianna Bilter. Leanna Fang. Alyssa Johnson. Sophie Davis. Michael Korsch. Evan Oxner. Natalie Chun. Rupa Pala. Kai Kramer. Esri Killeen. Florence O'Connor. Grace Jager. Mia Hirsch. Callie Abraham. Lauren Mamini. Emily Norfolk. Sarah Philby. Nia Harris. Sarah Rosenblum. Justine Banbury. Cindy May. Hugh Mallon. Zachary Lavin Harris. Jacob Munoz. Jason Asenso. Inesh Rathi. Tenny Sang. Savannah Kelly. Christian Thorsberg. Andrew Marquardt. Andrew Geverts. Brett Hensel. Tessa Coppola. Tyler Sexton Holtmeyer.
Congratulations, graduates. We will now recognize Bachelor of Science Journalism graduates who are unable to join us in person today.
Zach Bright. Yahan Chen. Danielle Johnson. Ha Ram Jung. Chloe Junghyun Ha. Alexis Lanza. Chloe Lombardi. Elise Schaefer. Jesse Zhuang. Hanfei Jiang. Xiyang Zhou.
We will now present degrees of Masters in Science and Journalism. We will now begin distributing degrees. Please hold your applause till everybody has had their moment on stage.
Amanda Rooker. Julia Benbrook. Alicia Diaz. Augusta Victoria Saraiva. Cheyenne Daniels. Daniel Constantino. Lark Breen. Maria Arias. Carly Jordan Downey Goldenberg. Dahlia Fahid. Jay Silver. Allison Augusta Schatz. Bennett Baker. Liam Bowen Meisner. Emily Burns. Kelly Milan. Thomas Smith. Carlin Cranking. Emily Little. Marissa Sloan. Grace Rogers. Natalie Eilbert. Caroline Catherman. Diamond Taylor Alexandria Palmer. Leona McAfee. India Andrea Walton. Rodrika Taylor. Catherine Henderson. Marie Mendoza. Christopher Vasquez. Debbie Marie Brown. Millicent Golding. Jane Shin Agler. Kira Liedholm. Samantha Struzas. Caroline Love. Chris Villalonga Vivoni. Gabrielle Bondi. Bryce Jones. Julie Kang. Mac Liederman. Kayla Wynn. Gabby Rodriguez. Izzy Strubant. Jeffrey Chamer. Alexander Scher. Yvonne Crumry. Margaret Cates. Benjamin Rosenberg. Jiang Li. Tina Tan. Eric Xu. Yuhan Ma. Hazel Han Ju Tang. Rachel Gaylor. Connor Grohl. James Carter Bird. Brandon Joseph Schaff. Julia Atkins. Jake Bramande. Joe Chatz. David Morrow. Cameron Reed Bopp. Casey Drotter. Jonathan Mills. Anders Backstrom. Ashton Pollard. Madison Williams. Laura Harris. Shaz Pirani. David Korzanowski. Madison Muller. Monique Alexandra Beals. Rebecca Holland. Amelia Burns. Emily Zuhowski. Daisy Kershaw. Jade Nicole Nash. Kayla McDermott. Zachary Shanus. Dylan Murphy. Brandon Rudy. Alexandra Elena Todd. Sophie Kim. Anna Suarez. Vali Pereira. Irene Chang. Elon Chung. Michael Murney. Aiden Cruz Hannon. Aaron Warwood. Carolyn Tan. Shivani Majmudar. Melody Guernsey. Kelly Heinzerling. Brevin Fleischer. Michael Tyrell. Sam Albuquerque.
Congratulations, MSJ graduates. We will now recognize MSJ graduates who were unable to join us in person today.
Courtney Kippers. Sian Shin. Amy Ouyang. Saeed Ba Abdullah. Jennifer Drysdale. Charlie Woo Young Jin. Hong Yun Kim. Emmanuel Quizito. Rebecca Klein. Hannah Lichtenstein. Grace Mizuraki. Sam Noss. Holden Pirelli. Alexandria Perry. Nicholas Portuando. Helen Quinn Passon. Zihan Wang. Cesar Vasquez. James Lin. Katie Livingstone. Mark DeVitch. Esther Wells. Caitlin Farley.
That's a final round of applause for all of our graduates. Congratulations. I would now like to invite Daniel McKenzie, Associate Director for Student Life, to the podium to close out our program. Mr. McKenzie.
Congratulations, graduates. We have a special gift for each of you as you exit today. And for some of you, will be lucky enough to have a signed copy of Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. You can, graduates can check under your seat for an envelope, or probably the seats around you, and you can give that to our staff in the lower lobby for that gift. After our platform guests process out of Very excited. After our platform guests process out of the ceremony, students will follow their advisors outside, out of the north and east side, to meet your guest. Families and friends, if you could remain seated until all of our platform party and our students have left the space. You can now join us to sing the Northwestern alma mater. Stand and join us in singing the Northwestern alma mater.